All right, Anna Youell, Ordinary Holiness interview. We go to St. Pat's over here, and you're not a St. Pat's person, so I don't know if anybody, other than like St. Pat's students, I don't know if anybody even knows who Anna Youell is over here at St. Pat's. Maybe you should tell us, who is Anna Youell? Tell us about yourself.
Okay, so I grew up at St. Stephen the Martyr, and then my family moved after my freshman year. So now I go to St. Robert's, and I was invited on a retreat with St. Pat's. So I went on a retreat with St. Pat's, and then one of our lovely young adult leaders, his name is Alex.
Oh,
Alex,
the Alex guy. Oh, I know you're talking about.
Alex was like, "Hey, you want to come and join our like youth retreat leader group?" And I'm like, "Sure, that sounds fun." So I was invited in, and now I participate in a lot of the youth ministry activities.
Cool. I think that's how I first met you too, was when you were at St. Stephen's. I remember seeing your dad. I met your dad through some common friends and your mom, and I would see you guys sometimes at Mass as well, early in the morning at 6:30. I'd see you popping in there every once in a while in your mercy gear, or maybe, I don't know, maybe at that time you were at St. Stephen's, who knows? But tell us a little bit about, where do you go to school at? What kind of things do you do?
I go to Mercy High School. I run cross country. Yes, we are the monarchs, the butterflies, not the kings and queens. There's a funny story behind that, but I'll tell you guys later. Anyway, so I go to Mercy. I run cross country and track. I do long distance for track. I really enjoy show choir.
Ooh.
Just sing and dance, and that's fun.
Yeah.
And then I'm technically a part of Pro-Life Club. I'm not able to miss most meetings because they're the same time that show choir is, but I do all the activities with them that are outside of that. So once we went and we prayed at the abortion clinic on 90th and Maple.
Yeah.
And a lot of times they'll go down to Bellevue and pray.
Oh, yeah.
And then Mercy is this really cool prayer club. It's called Divina. It's on Fridays.
Is it Davina or Novena?
Divina. D-I-E-N-A?
Divina. I get, like Lectio Divina, but just the Divina part. Got it.
And so we just sit in the chapel and we'll just pray. Usually have one of the teachers lead it, or a student lead it. So
awesome.
That's fun.
Yeah, I can definitely see that's been a big part of your life, that pro-life stuff. And that's kind of what I've known you about around here. You're always sending out texts to the kids hey, if anybody wants to go pray at the abortion clinic, hey, if anybody wants to pray a novena real quick, hey, if anybody wants to pray the Divine Mercy Chaplet for the sanctity of life, you just let me know and I'm doing it. So you're definitely zealous about that, that's for sure, which I appreciate. Well, let's talk about, you kind of mentioned your family, different churches that you've gone to, different groups that you're in. What have been some moments throughout your life, whether you were a little kid or whether you were in high school, maybe retreats that you went on? What were some moments in your life, maybe one or two or three, that you can think of that really helped you to grow in this devotion to Jesus Christ, or be interested in his church and with your involvement, etc.?
So when I was 6th or 7th grade, I'm not sure, but I was a part of this group called Challenge. It's run by the Regnum Christi.
Okay. I'm talking about, yeah.
And they threw on this retreat down in Kansas. So me and my challenge group went. It's about 9 of us. And they had an adoration time. And it was just really nice because I could just sit with Jesus, obviously. But retreat adorations are so special. I feel like God really pours down special graces during that time.
Yeah.
And this is one of my favorite ways to pray, but they do an all-night adoration at every single challenge retreat. So different cabins kind of have different time slots. Okay. And you do the whole night. It's so cool. But I just so we got roused at 2 or 3 in the morning, and we walked down to the chapel, and I just got to sit with Jesus, and it was really special.
Awesome. That is really cool.
It was one of the first times I liked adoration.
Mm-hmm.
Because before that, sometimes my parents always go to adoration on Sundays, and so before that, when they go, my mom would always ask us, "Hey, who wants to go?" And sometimes I go just because I feel like I should be doing it, let's
right.
make Jesus happy,
right.
kind of thing. But I really enjoyed it because it wasn't like I wasn't ever being forced to go, but it wasn't like I didn't like feel guilty about going, you know?
Yeah.
It was just like fun.
It was a desire, huh? As opposed to like a obligation, there was a desire in you to go explore this Eucharist thing. Like, what is this? I'm not. No one's making me go, but I have this like longing to go to the Eucharist, huh?
Yeah.
Awesome. I would say that that's all too common. You know, with a lot of the students I talk to that are really on fire for God and on fire for the Church of Jesus Christ. And it's bizarre too, because even though I'm a church person, like I look from the outside, I'm like, that is so weird. Like I bet people look at us and they're just like, really, like that circle-y bread thing up there, and this girl's like all in, like, okay, weirdo, you know. But that kind of, I guess that kind of leads into some of these things we talk about a lot, these 5 ordinary means of holiness. You know, you talk about retreats and how retreats are like extraordinary, you know, ways to come to know Jesus. Like you don't always get up at 3 o'clock in the morning, 2 o'clock in the morning to go to the adoration chapel, but there are things you can do to kind of call back to those experiences or bring those experiences into your daily life. And obviously one of them is the sacraments. That's the second one, but we'll dive right into that one if you want to. And we'll talk about, you know, how the sacraments look in your life. That's an example of the Eucharist playing a big part when you were, you know, in 6th grade or so. How does the Eucharist and how does confession look in your life right now?
So I've definitely grown in like a love for the Mass. I think I've always been, not that I've like hated the Eucharist, like I've always been like open to the Eucharist. But I really have like grown to love like the actual Mass.
Yeah.
And itself as a prayer. Like I read most of the book. A lot of books I don't finish. But I read a lot of The Lamb's Supper.
Oh yeah.
And I really, really liked it. And I really liked his whole covenant theology, and how he explores different covenants. So like the Old Testament, the New Testament, and like all the different Old Testament ones, and how the New Testament fulfills all of the Old Testament things.
Yeah.
And I really liked it. And then I did a video series that's run by his organization that he started in Ohio called the St. Paul Center.
Yep.
And it talked about the Eucharist, and it was technically called the Bible and the Church Fathers, but it was basically all about the Eucharist and how the Church Fathers responded. And there's like a lot of biblical things in there. And it was all kind of overlooked by this view of like this whole covenant theology. And so I think that's so cool. And so like, it's so life-changing to think that this isn't just the Mass, this isn't just this thing that we go to on Sundays, but it's like the fulfillment of all of these years of waiting that the Testament people have been waiting for, that like we're the new chosen people, even though we're Gentiles.
Yeah, right.
We're all now called.
It's everybody, right? To this one thing, right? Like to receive Jesus Christ in his body and his blood. And interesting too, how you're talking about like the Mass has become more than just like something that you do, but it like continues to get deeper. You continue to learn more about it. Like you're diving into it and like sifting through all these ideas and learning new things all the time. And then I think that's the truth. Like I've even seen you text out things, or we'll be on a group and be like, hey guys, I was just reading this book and you're not gonna believe what I found. Like you're just like on fire about it, which is so cool. How about when it comes to, you know, there's the Eucharist, but also that which goes hand in hand with the Eucharist is reconciliation. How has that been in your life? You know, if you're going back at, you know, if you're time at St. Stephen's, time at St. Robert's, at Mercy, you know, just within your family, how have you viewed reconciliation over your life?
So I've always had this kind of, I don't know, you could call it like extraordinary feeling or something. But so whenever I go to reconciliation, and it happened more when I was younger, it's happening less often now, but it's like once I exit reconciliation, like I feel like my soul is lighter. Like I always think of this image, like you're like carrying this weight on your back, and there are these bricks that are like stacked up in like a little carrier that is like slung over your back, kind of like a backpack.
Yeah.
And like you're so used to it that you don't like feel it, you know?
Interesting.
But then when you go to confession, once you exit it, all of a sudden they just like vanish, and you just feel so much lighter, you know?
Yeah. Like if you're in the batter's circle and you're swinging that heavy bat, you know, you're like, oh man, you're used to it, you're doing whatever. But then you start taking some hacks with an actual bat, and you're like, goodness sakes, like that's unbelievably light. I can't believe it. And that's just another example like you're talking about, which I'd never really thought about before, how you get used to the burden of that backpack. And then all
Yeah.
of a sudden it's like, whoa, I didn't realize I was carrying around that much stuff. That's pretty extraordinary. That's awesome.
Yeah.
But you'd say it's kind of changing as you get older though.
Yeah. It's just like, I don't know if I'm less aware of it. I don't know. I think it might be because I'm going more often.
Hmm.
So there's less like weight in that carrying
Interesting. Yeah, so
backpack.
the bag's not getting as heavy, so you're not noticing that it's quite as heavy.
Yeah.
And so you've seen that it's, as you've been able to drive and stuff, have you been able to go to reconciliation more on your own time when you desire to, or what?
So I've always lived pretty close to church.
Okay.
So like in Stevens, I was like a mile away, and now I'm about like 3/4 of a mile. But now it's like, so at St. Stephen's, I had to cross this big old intersection. It was kind of like harder to get there, but now it's like I live in the St. Robert's neighborhood, so I can
Yeah.
like walk.
Awesome.
So it's cool, but definitely being able to drive. Like I remember the first thing that I did when I turned 16 was I drove to 6:30 mass before. I drove to Mercy on my birthday, so that's
Awesome.
really. I've just been able to do more things. So like, I work a lot of nights, and it's right across the road from St. Robert's. And I've gotten really into walking actually recently. I have lots of stories. That's one of them. But I can't walk at walk at 3 p.m. and then like at 10:30, like I'm not gonna walk a mile home in the dark.
Right,
So
right.
like I'll drive there, and my parents know that even though technically it ends at 9:30, it never really ends at 9:30, but I could be home anywhere from 9:30 to 10:30.
Mm-hmm.
So I usually sneak on over to Jesus. I think
Yeah.
it's kind of like Jesus is like, hey, dude, come on over here. Like it's always like a pit stop on my way
Yeah.
home.
Hey, I'll get you off work early tonight if you spend half an hour with me. What do you think? Like, okay, I guess. You
Yeah,
can't get enough of me, can you? That's cool. So a little bit more freedom though to be able to do some of those things now that you've been able to
yeah,
drive and living around the churches.
yeah. It's just nice because like my parents aren't like watching over my every move.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So like I can just kind of do whatever whenever I want, kind
I
of.
guess you've kind of shown them that you're trustworthy. Like, we keep
Yeah.
finding her in the church, so I guess we're gonna be okay with that, I suppose. Not so bad. You've proven yourself trustworthy, it seems. Well, how about prayer? How have you found prayer growing in your life? I know that you've got quite a few devotions and you're always on to some new book and stuff, which we're gonna get to at the end when it comes to study, but what does prayer look like in your life right now?
So I think that's the thing that kept me in in my faith, was my parents kind of like they always insisted on 5 minutes of morning prayer. So like I used to, what my siblings still do this, is like read the daily readings.
Yeah.
Mass. But then so my family went to this family conference or something, some Catholic family thing a long time ago. I was in 6th grade, and it was a 6th grade through 12th grade program. So like I didn't know anybody there, and I was super young. It was really awkward. But Father, I think it was Michael Gately.
Sure.
He's the author of 33 Days to Morning Glory. So he was there, and he was handing out these free magazines almost. It's just like a magazine version of his book, 33 Days to Morning Glory. And he handed it out to everybody. And it's just like, if you don't know what it is, it's just like a devotion to Mary. Like it's 33 days of like a do-it-yourself retreat.
Yeah.
And so I remember when I got home, like later on, like probably a month later, I just did this retreat. And like, it's like technically like offering your life to Mary, kind of to Jesus through Mary.
Yeah.
And I didn't really think much of it afterwards. I mean, I just kind of did it, and I just kept kind of like I got this little daily devotional that I was doing, and that kind of helped because it was like every day you have like a Bible verse and a reflection, and then you could like go deeper with like these other Bible verses, and that was cool. But then later on, I got back into the 33 Days of Morning Glory. I opened it up, and I'm like, hey, let's do this thing again. So I just did it again, and I remembered that I had always been interested, that they had always been, there had been a lot of excerpts in the 33 Days of Morning Glory from the Lucy Montfort book, True Devotion to Mary.
Yep.
And so I feel like the Holy Spirit was like putting this on my spirit to do it for a long time. So I finally, like a year later, went out and bought True Devotion to Mary.
Yeah.
And I read it. And then a year later, quarantine started. And I'm like, hey, there's this special Lucy Montfort consecration to Mary.
Yeah.
Let's do it. So I called up some youth group friends. I'm like, hey, you want to do this with me?
Yeah.
And Daisy said, yeah. So I'm like, okay. So we did this hardcore devotion to Mary, and it was awesome.
It's great, huh? So like this like devotion of your life, it's kind of found itself to be a regular experience of your prayer life, not just like a one-time thing, but you find yourself continually going back and like reconsecrating yourself, or finding like it's. I've heard people say that the true devotion is a little bit more meaty. It's got quite a bit more substance than like 33 days is one that you can do. Like many people can do it, but the true devotion is pretty serious and pretty hefty.
Yeah. So 33 days is a page a day. So it's
Okay.
like a long page, but it's a page a day.
Yeah.
You just read about that, and then you reflect on it during your day, kind of when you're walking around. You just kind of think about what you did that morning. But True Devotion to Mary, it's a wonderful book. It's a wonderful consecration. So there's different prayers. So it's divided up into like 4 different parts.
Okay.
And so each part has like slightly different prayers. So you say a few prayers a day. They're not too bad. But then there's also like these ways to go deeper. There's these, I don't remember what it's called, but it's like study or something. It's listed and there's different chapters to read from. So there's the Gospels, Imitation of Christ,
right,
Secret of Mary, which was another Lucy Montfort book, and there's a few more. And so they'll just list these chapters that you read. So the first week isn't bad. It's like a chapter or 2 a day. But then when you get on, it's like more like 4 chapters a day.
Yeah.
And they're not long chapters. It's just when I read things, I go really slow.
Yeah.
Because the Holy Spirit's like, we're going to do it this way. And so I'm like, okay, Holy Spirit, we're going to do it this way.
So it's like running, I guess. You start off, we're going to run a mile, and then all of a sudden, next thing you know, you're running 4 miles, or it's getting a little bit more serious. They kind of ramp you up a little bit. Cool. That's awesome with the consecrations. I haven't heard anybody really talk about that on here, so I'm glad you mentioned that. That's kind of a unique thing for you. But one thing that I do hear people talk about on here is we talk about charity, which usually isn't so much of like, going out and doing all these amazing things like mission trips and stuff like that, but it exists within our own homes. And I love to talk to kids that have some pretty big families. And I think that you're one of those. Are you one of, is it 6 or 7? 7. Okay. You got 7. So there're probably many opportunities for charity and many opportunities to deny yourself. And so we also have that mortification in there too. You're finding probably many ways to love your siblings and parents, and many ways to deny yourself or offer up sufferings for those in your family. How does that look on both of those accounts? How does your life look, especially when it comes to your family, in charity and mortification?
I'm gonna deviate a little from how you prompted me.
Oh my goodness. All right.
But I used to kind of hate charity.
Okay.
Not like the actual word, but just like the thing itself. I mean, you just don't want to be nice to people. And then one day, I don't know if it was you, Adam, or like a book or something, but like I realized, or I read somewhere, Adam said it, that like charity is like, I think Adam said it, charity is like one of the most important things that you can be doing. Like you gotta be like loving others and stuff, and really like trying to do it, because that's like really important. I don't know. You heard some quote somewhere.
We had something to say about it, right? Some serious quote that I dug up from some catechism or something, right?
It was some quote or something. And then I was watching a YouTube video about one of the sisters of St. Faustina's order. Said that St. Faustina, when she was alive, she was in the hospital for some reason, and there was this sick patient next to her, and she heard the doorbell for the sick it was like a bell kind of to like call the nurse for the
Sure.
sick patient next door.
You didn't just have that little button on the little electronic thing, huh? You had to actually ring a bell, huh? Because it was
I
way back in the day. They didn't have those back then.
So she went over there to see what it was. And she was gonna go down and like pray in the chapel and stuff, but she decided to go help this person instead.
Yeah.
And so she went and helped this person, even though she was like a patient herself. She went and helped this person. And when she came back, Jesus told her that it was he was more happy that she went and helped this person than if she would have gone down to the chapel and prayed for a really long time.
Yeah.
So it's just like awareness that like charity is actually really important, and you should actually kind of try really hard. So
yeah, you're totally right. When you say it, I love how you say it, like, so it seems that charity is actually really important. I really actually like doing this, like truly loving your neighbor as yourself, loving God for his own sake. Like, it actually turns out to be a pretty big deal. Faith, hope, and love, and the greatest of these is love. Who even knew? Oh my gosh.
And I didn't even like realize that I was like hating it. Like I wasn't doing it like maliciously or like even thinking about not doing it, but just like, especially during like this time that we're all together as a family and you get to hang out with people for a really long time.
With those crazy cats that live with you that look like girls, but they look like girls but act like cats. Those are the ones we're talking about.
Yes. So that just really hit home that you should just like really try to like people, you know?
Yeah.
So,
and obviously you got to deny yourself, like I think sometimes I've heard another story like that from this guy named Father Larry Richards, and he talked about that same kind of story. Like he was like rushing to see Jesus. He didn't do it like St. Faustina. St. Faustina made the right choice, but he made the wrong choice and like rushed to this chapel, and there was somebody along the way and he totally did his own thing. But St. Faustina here denies herself and denies what she wants to do to minister to this person. And Jesus says, obviously, like, what you did for the least of my brothers, you did for me. And that's clearly what happened in St. Faustina right there, which happens to go hand in hand with a little self-denial, huh? When you don't always get to do what you want to do, especially in a bigger family like you have, you don't get whatever you want, do you?
No. And like I've seen it recently with like my friends. So my friends, a lot of them are in smaller families and they don't have much to do this summer. So they'll be just like either they're working or they're going to hang out with friends or something. I don't really know.
Yeah.
But just like whatever they're doing, like a lot of times like this summer, and like I've realized that my life is different than theirs and I can't necessarily do the same things that they can because there still needs to be time in my life for my family, even though maybe they have like all their siblings off at college or like their parents are working. Like my mom is a stay-at-home mom and my siblings all hang out at home. So like my siblings miss me and they need to see me. So like I like like I can't work 60 hours a week, even though some of my friends could because their parents work. So it's not like they're missing out on seeing their parents.
Yeah.
They're just missing out like an empty house. So
yeah. But you have these things, which is good, but with that goodness of having a big family, it does kind of limit what you can do in other areas compared to what other people might be able to do without that big family. So you have to miss out on certain things. But on the flip side, I mean, I think that when it comes to like people dying on their deathbed, they're not going to be like, darn, I wish I would have just worked more. I don't know what I was thinking, as opposed to like, I wish I would have spent more time with my family when we were all there together. I think that so many kids that are graduating are starting to realize what a blessing this is as they leave for college. They're saying like, you know what? I'm so blessed to have 2 or 3, 4 months to really spend with my family before I leave for college. And they really take that as a source of a blessing in their life. And then they think it's a great thing, which is what you're doing right now.
Yeah.
Well, how about this category, this last one, and then we'll get to the final question. But this last category is study. And it seems like you're no slouch when it comes to reading a new book or watching a new video. How does that look in your life? How do you study your faith and grow in knowledge of like the mass? Or I mean, you can talk about it already, but what's your go-to medium? Do you like to read books or watch videos? What do you do?
I kind of think of videos as like a cheat. Like I love videos to death. I love YouTube. It's wonderful. I love Ascension Presents. It's great. Father Mike and Father Mike Mary and all those dudes are. But I feel like me personally, like the way that I've been thinking a lot about uniqueness, recently, and how God has like a different plan for each and every person.
Yep.
Now each and every person is called to like glorify him, going to their like the most perfect way that they personally can, given their God gifts and talents. But the way that God has made me is that I watch YouTube videos for fun. I like watching Father Mike Schmitz talk about random things, especially when they're things, because it's kind of fun. But I wouldn't call it technically studying.
Okay.
Study for me is books.
Yeah.
I think, like what I said earlier about how like I have to go slow through books because the Holy Spirit's like, dude, that's how it's gonna go. It's true. It's like I have to go slow, but when I do go slow, then I comprehend it really, really, really well.
Yeah.
And I think it comes with being like, I think I adapt really well in school to whatever the teacher needs, but just like everything in school is so book based or book oriented. So a lot of that has probably come from school.
Sure.
But like I really just enjoy just like reading books. So like I didn't really get into it much until high school, and I didn't even realize I was doing it this much. But so I got into a little bit before high school, like a little bit in 8th grade, like a sprinkle. And I've always like been like, so I do like my reading the Bible is like a Lexio, but it's like one read through. So Lexio usually has 3 read throughs, but I just do like one long Lexio.
Like a flow, like just like taking it just like word by word or really slow, right?
Yeah, I've gotten more able to do it a little quicker.
Okay.
But yeah, so it's gotten faster as I've come along in years. But so I was definitely doing that a lot in like middle school-ish. But like so my prayer time routine, like especially like probably like 7th grade or something, like in 8th grade and like freshman, sophomore year, probably up until this year, was morning I'll just do maybe read the readings, but morning is just like a few prayers and then go. Yeah. But evening is like study time. So like even if I'm up to like 12 or something or like 11 doing homework, like I should
11,
huh? But even if I am, then a lot of times I just like cover up my alarm clock and I say like, this is Jesus time, and I get out the Bible or whatever I'm reading at that moment and just like look at it. But I think and so that sometimes the Lord lets us last like an hour. He likes to like steal my time when I give it to him. Well, I guess
it's not really stealing if you give it to him, right? Like, hey, you gave it to him and he did what he would.
Yeah, he likes to do things that I might not necessarily choose to do.
Yeah, a little challenge, huh?
Yeah. But so
I like how you said that about like just in general with your reading, like whether it's reading the Bible or whether it's reading these books. You know, for a guy like me, I like to read the book and say that I've read it. But if you ask me what happened in the book, I'd be like, I don't even know, man, but I know I've read it. But you're sitting there and you're truly like soaking all of this in and just really making sure that it sticks and that you're really just chewing on it, just getting all the flavor out of it that you can. That's awesome.
As a result, I don't usually, a lot of times I don't finish the books because I feel like authors like repeating themselves too much.
Yeah.
Because they have to like draw back on a certain point to emphasize their new point.
Yeah.
But like a lot of times I'm gonna be like, yeah, you've said that a lot. And so I'll just like, not intentionally, but I just kind of just stop reading it.
Yeah, you get the point, right? Like I have soaked up the point. I understand. Next book.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't necessarily say like next book. It's just like whatever happens to like come up next, then I'll just kind of like start reading on it. And sometimes I'll be reading like 2 books at once and one will like slowly fade away. I feel like what really helps, I didn't realize it at the time, and I don't think I realized it honestly until this year, but I had a really awesome theology teacher at Mercy my freshman year. His name is Mr. Madigan. And he's moved to Phoenix this year.
Oh,
really sad, but he's gonna be closer to his family, so that's good. But freshman year is church history at Mercy, and so I loved it. I loved it to death. And a lot of people like decided, hey, he doesn't like, because he didn't require, like, he was a little bit more lax as a teacher. He didn't like force you to turn off your iPad during class or stuff like that. So it was kind of like a choice whether you wanted to like participate or not, you know. But he had some really great material. He had us read a bunch of C.S. Lewis books because he loves C.S. Lewis. I mean, I appreciate C.S. Lewis. I'm not a big C.S. Lewis person just because I read so many of them. And
right.
But so he had us do these debates a lot, and it was kind of fun because it was like about the origin of God and like kind of like arguments for God's existence.
Yeah, cool.
And so, and there's a little bit of like Protestant stuff in there later on. But one night I remember he had us like go home and figure out like what were you going to argue for these things. So I had a really difficult one. I had to argue the Protestant point of view for something. And so I went home and I'm like, hey, Dad, I need help. And my dad's a reader. My dad, he has a huge bookcase full of books about what he does, what about his job, about church. He has so many books about church, about just random things that he's interested in. But he's a convert. Yeah. And so he used to be some sort of Protestant. He was kind of like all over. Okay. He had different Protestant. Yeah. Anyway, he was in different denominations at different periods in his life. But so he converted, and when he's kind of like me, he likes books a lot. Yeah. So when he was converting, he was reading all these different texts and stuff from like church fathers. He realized, oh my goodness, church fathers were Catholic. They weren't Protestant. Oh! Yeah. And like just lots of other things like the Mary belief and like all the special things pertaining to Catholicism and just random things in between like JP2 and all of his many documents and such. Anyway, so I asked him for help and I realized just how great of a resource my dad is. Yeah. And I've been like, since then, I've just started like going back to my dad and a lot of things for like a lot of different things that I need theological books on. Yeah. Like I got the perfect thing for that. I'm gonna get this one right here. Here you go. This is all your answers. And I can steal from his library whenever I want. Yeah. What a blessing. Yes, it's right outside my door. It's a wonderful. Who knew dads were so cool? Yeah. So honestly, right now, I'm thinking I might be actually a theology major in college because awesome. I love that stuff so much. Yeah. Well, how about this? Here's the last question. What is something like whether it's come from you or come from a parent or come from another friend? What's something that you've seen like in the realm of evangelization, like encouraging students to take their faith seriously? What's something that you've seen work in the negative, like it's been bad for kids, like for like kids your age, or what's something that you've seen that's worked in the positive for students what's really worked well, that's really encouraged them in their faith? So a two-part question. Well, I'll start with the negative. Especially I think in middle school, our religion teachers didn't really, I didn't go to St. Pat's, so I'm not talking about St. Pat's teachers. Yeah, you're not. Not at all. They just kind of kept teaching us kind of the same things, and they weren't bad things. They were just church teachings, like the Assumption theory and different things that the church believes in that you should learn about. But they didn't ever go deeper than really what you had in like 5th grade or something, you know? And they didn't explore like the difficult topics. Okay. And they didn't go deep enough. And they were, I don't know if they were too scared to go into the difficult topics. Father Mark was at my old parish, and then he's also at St. Robert's, kind of crazy. Yeah. But so sometimes talk about difficult topics with him, but like I feel like a lot of parents and like teachers and stuff, especially like middle school kids, are too scared to like talk about certain issues that they might not realize, but the kids already been exposed to all these issues. And if we're not going to talk about the Catholic side of things, because we feel like they're not appropriate, well, they've already been exposed to the non-Catholic side of things, and they've already kind of accepted them as truth. And if you don't intervene and say, and just like talk about these difficult issues, then and also kind of making, like, service isn't a bad thing, but I've been exploring just a lot of different, like, just random things, but a lot of things I see is people will say they're Catholic, and it's good. I'm not saying individual people, I'm saying like organizations. People at these organizations, it'll be like a Catholic organization, and they do good things. Like maybe like a church, like a Catholic church, or like a Catholic school or something like that, Catholic college. And they'll say they're Catholic, and they do very good things. They go to Mass on Sundays. Mm-hmm. They go to confession every once in a while, you know. They do good things. But their whole faith life is all oriented on service, which is not a bad thing.
Charity's good. We said that earlier. Charity's good.
So important. But it's like, that's like all, and it's not even like charity in like the personal way, like you do it in your family. It's just extraordinary means of service, which are not bad things.
Right, they're good too.
That's the only thing that they do.
Would you say it's like you wouldn't want to judge anybody's faith, but like, would it seem as though there's like an overemphasis on doing things and not much of emphasis on like true devotion to Jesus or
and like a lot of it I see, there's some of the common themes, like I've been looking a lot into college because I'm going to be a senior. A lot of the common things is like, there's not much emphasis on the Eucharist, which one of the church says is that church is the source and summit of all Christian life. So there's not a lot of emphasis on the Eucharist. And they never, like, they don't dive deep they don't dive deep into like those topics that are like either like uncomfortable. They just don't dive deep into like the lives of other humans in like a faith life level. Like they might become really good friends with the person, but they don't talk deep about faith and like morals and like what they believe and stuff. And it's just,
so maybe it's like a combo, you know, like of your two examples are kind of the same. The common thread would be like, yeah, we're talking about these things, you know, that are kind of surface level, you know, or even in the social justice thing, you know, we're talking about good temporal things, feeding the hungry, clothing the naked, but it goes beyond that to the supernatural. Or in your religion classes, like, yeah, I got the basics, like I'm looking for that deep dive, like I've had the milk and I'm ready for the meat. Come on, let me have it. You know, I'm hungry. I need something that's substance.
Absolutely. So just going deep, but you can't go deep right away. There has to be like a gradual, you have to have the milk first, but you have to have those opportunities to go deep into your faith, or else you're just always going to be either a surface level Catholic, or you're going to be Catholic innately, or you're not going to be a Catholic at all. So
there you go. Well, how about in the positive? What's something that you've seen positively that you've seen amongst your friends that have really encouraged them in their faith?
Well, I'll just talk about like, I don't know, certain aspects. So like some of my friends are just so excited. Like they go to youth group, and we have an awesome youth minister, Adam Stevenson. But
oh my gosh, I had that label.
Adam has some really cool opportunity. He set up youth group, and I don't know if he did that this way or it was always this way, but there's these really cool opportunities that there's not just one youth group, but there's all these different like places for you to be involved. So like there's like salt for the boys, and then there's discipleship. There's Sunday discipleship, where you share like these things that we've been talking about, like prayer and charity, like how your life's been going on a week by week basis. There's Spiral, where you plan retreats, and there's Rosary and Runza, where you pray the Rosary and you get Runza. And so there's all these different like opportunities for us, provided at St. Pat's, to go really deep into our faith, because there's all these different times and things available for us to do. But I haven't really thought about much like what makes these people so necessarily on fire for their faith. But one thing that has been apparent to me recently is I started a new job recently, and I've been like thinking about like, hey, a lot of my coworkers aren't Catholic, and just like the faith question has kind of been just like popping up in my mind. And so I heard somewhere that you're not the like evangelizer, so it's the Holy Spirit. The Holy Spirit will convert someone, not you. Like, you can be the Holy Spirit's instrument, but in the end, it's always the Holy Spirit. Right. So what we do might not necessarily, I don't know, what I can't tell you a definite to do, because in the end, it's going to be the Holy Spirit at work and uniquely in that person's life. But I know for me personally, how the Holy Spirit kind of led me into a deeper relationship was just always like having a prayer routine every morning and every evening. I mean, evening wasn't always super strong, but I think reading the daily readings in the morning helped. Or like when I didn't do that, like I'd read I had a teen devotional that was just, it was super quick. It was like a small little page, little quote, and like a reflection on it. And I really liked that. So just really, like always praying kind of.
It could be like finding what's good for that kid, you know, like whether you're evangelizing a friend, you know, finding that common ground with that person and letting the Holy Spirit work through two people on that common ground, or in a youth group setting, you know, establishing opportunities or encouraging your kid in opportunities that they really like, you know, not forcing them to go to certain ones that you like, but finding out what really speaks to them and what really encourages them in their faith.
Yeah. And just always encouraging your kid to like have like a prayer routine. Because my parents always said, have you done your 5 minutes of prayer time in the morning? Like that always helps. And like my mom has a Magnificat that has all the daily readings, so she'd hand us our Magnificat and say, have your prayer time. Like,
have your prayer time.
Yeah, so just like prayer time is so important.
Awesome. Well, awesome. I'll tell you what, you might have beat the boys. You know, we had some boys that put in some 30 minutes, but you might have got them. I'm gonna end it, and then we're gonna check out how long this is, and if it is, we're gonna be bragging to the boys like, hey, I don't know how deep your guys' prayer life is, but Anna just put out who knows, you know, put out something way more substantial. So Awesome. Well, thanks for joining us, and we'll put it on the YouTubes and the Facebooks and the Instagrams, and maybe we'll be famous. All right. We'll see you soon, Anna.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.